request that your Holy Spirit will inspire our minds and give us the strength to accept your bidding and to walk by every word that comes out of your mouth. We thank you for this convocation. We thank you for the opportunity of sharing together. And once again, speak to us and give us that bread of life, that bread from heaven that comes through Jesus and through his word. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen. The festivities. Okay, just. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. The festivities of the sanctuary, God's holy days and feasts, remind us of events in past redemption history with the people of Israel, but they also point forward to the great redemption through Christ. And we've seen how they are a compacted prophecy of the different events in the plan of salvation. Just like there are 7 feasts, there are 7 events in the plan of salvation that are important for us to understand and to be able to explain to others. The first festivities, the spring festivals, came very close together. They represented the first coming of Christ to earth. Both the Passover, the unleavened bread, and the first fruits were fulfilled in the life of Christ, in his death and his resurrection. 50 days later came the festivity called the weeks. In the New Testament, it is called Pentecost, after the name 50 days. Now, if all the festivals looked or were memorial of something that happened with the people of Israel, what was Pentecost a memorial of? Yes, that is exactly right. It was the giving of the law, the proclaiming of the 10 Commandments, and it happened exactly 50 days after they left Egypt. I'm not going to take the time this morning to show you, but you can go to the book of Exodus and look at the sojournings of the people of Israel, and it will tell you the Passover was eaten on the 15th of Nisan. It was killed on the 14th, like we saw before, but it was eaten on the first day of the unleavened bread. And that same night, as we saw before, they left Egypt on a hurry. They wandered, and eventually came the great liberation through the crossing of the sea. Now, the Apostle Paul tells us the meaning of this. If you look up in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, beginning in verse 1. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. Now, the crossing of the Red Sea was a symbol of baptism, but also being baptized in the cloud. Who was in the cloud? Christ himself was in the cloud. And it happened like this. Pharaoh gave the order, leave on a hurry. I want you to go. And we read that yesterday when we read about Passover and how they left Egypt on the very same day. But instead of guiding them through the short way, the Lord guided them to a spot that was going to be troublesome. They went into a path where they had mountains on both sides and the Red Sea in front of them. There was no way anywhere else to go. That part of their wandering was still in Egypt, in the land of Egypt. And there were posts of guards that guarded the frontier. And those guards let Pharaoh know that these people were not just going to worship and go back. They were leaving. And so the word got to Pharaoh that plans had changed. Well, they had never changed for God. But Moses in Exodus 5:1 had asked Pharaoh, let us go and worship the Lord in the desert. Well, now Pharaoh was 2 or 3 days after the death of his first son. They had all been buried in Egypt. And now he noticed, we don't have the slaves anymore. And he said, we got to go and get them back if they're going to leave. And that's when he sent his armies behind them. And you know the story. Paul says that they were baptized in the cloud. How were they baptized in the cloud? If you look again in Exodus, I believe it's chapter 14. The last two verses of chapter 13, which is the flee from Egypt, it says, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and by night. So they did not sleep on the way. They just went on, day and night. They were a little tired. He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. And the Lord spake, this is chapter 14 now. The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. And he was told the king, this is by their guards that were posted in that area. It was told to the king of Egypt that the people fled. Look, they're leaving. They're not coming back. And the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this? Why did we let Israel go from serving us? We won't have any more slaves to do our work now. And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. And he took his 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursue after them all the horses and the chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamping by the sea beside Pi-hahiroth, before Baal-zephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, you've taken us out to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is it not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? It's unbelievable. You know, they've seen the hand of God. They've seen the miracles. They've seen the plagues. They've seen how the Lord delivered them. They've seen how the Lord gave them grace before the eyes of the Egyptians, so that they spoiled the Egyptians. They've seen the cloud of fire, the cloud as a shadow in the day and a fire at night. But here, 3 days later, they're already saying, we should have stayed in Egypt. We told you that. We told you so. We should have stayed in Egypt and served the Egyptians. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and he shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, why are they crying unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. But lift up thou thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and I will divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, that they shall follow after them right into the sea. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his hosts, and upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, that I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And now here is the baptism on the cloud. It comes in verse 19. And the angel of God, this is the angel, not an angel. All right? It's Christ himself, the messenger of the covenant. And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud of darkness to the Egyptians, but it gave light by night to the Israelites, so that the one came not near the other all that night. Now the cloud was in front of them, guiding them. But at this point, the cloud lifted. The invisible angel of the Lord, Christ himself, he baptized them as he went over them, on top of the whole host of Israel. And the cloud lifted, and it actually went on top of their heads. And it went down between them and the Egyptians. That's the baptism through the cloud. Christ himself anointed the congregation. And that cloud stood between them the whole night. It was a cloud of darkness to the Egyptians, but it was a pillar of fire, of light to the Israelites. And they went into the sea, and you know the rest of the story. That, Paul says, was the baptism of the people of Israel. It was their baptism through the sea. But please notice, death and resurrection at Passover, at the feast of the unleavened bread. This all happened at the time of the unleavened bread. This is why they eat, or we eat, the unleavened bread. This is why God established these very feasts, to remind them of this whole thing that happened from Passover that night, when the angel of the Lord passed over, and because of the sign of the blood, they were delivered. But there's two deliverances. There's actually three. One is a deliverance from death of the firstborn. Then there is the deliverance from Egypt itself when they left. And then there is the great deliverance through the baptism on the sea. But that is a representation of the resurrection. They should have died. The water should have covered them like they did with Egyptians. But the Lord baptized them through the sea, and they came out on the other side a new people, a liberated people, a redeemed people forever. They would never see the Egyptians again. Praise the Lord. Okay, so this is all part of the Passover, or the unleavened bread feast, that we need to understand. It talks about deliverance. Now, on the same day, on the third month, they came to Sinai. This is Exodus chapter 19, verse 1. In the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. Now, when you count the days, this was in the same day that they left of Egypt. That's exactly 47 days after the first day of the unleavened bread. Not quite the 50. Not quite the 50. But then the Lord said to Moses, "You've seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bared you on eagle's wings, and I brought you out myself. I brought you unto myself." I'm reading in chapter 19. "Now therefore ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant. Then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. These are the words that thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel." God wanted to make them a nation of priests, a holy nation. This is why he brought them to the foot of Mount Sinai. And then Moses came and called the elders of the people, and laid before all their faces the words which the Lord had commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, "All that the Lord has spoken we will do." And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, "Lo, I will come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people around about, saying, Take heed to yourself, that ye not go up the mountain, nor touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. For there shall not a hand touch the mountain, but he shall surely be stoned, or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up the mountain. And Moses went down from the mountain unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day. Come, not at your wives. So there is a preparation that we need to do to celebrate even these festivities, just like the Lord has commanded. Now, we're getting close now to Pentecost, 50 days. And Pentecost, like it was just mentioned, it reminds us of the proclamation of the law. Now, what day was Pentecost? 50 days. What day of the week did it fall? I don't mean this time. I mean the first time that it was instituted. Same as first fruits. Well, the very first Pentecost, I'm looking here at a book that I want to recommend to all of you. If you don't have it, you need to get it because it's an excellent book. It's by Sarah Peck. You've seen this book, right? Are you familiar with this book? It's called The Path to the Throne of God. If you haven't read this book, you need to get it. It's tremendous. I don't agree with everything she says, but I would say with most of it, 99.9%. It's excellent. And she has here a little appendix and shows on that year of the Exodus, Pentecost fell on the Sabbath day. That was the proclamation of the law. So the Lord himself came down on that mountain. And it was actually 50 days after they departed from Egypt. So the great liberation came on a Sabbath also. All right? Great liberation on a Sabbath as well. That year. If the calendar they've used is correct, and the set date for the Exodus is 1445 BC, then it fell on a Sabbath. That first Pentecost. And you know, the Bible says that the Lord came down, and please read because it's very impressive as it puts it in Exodus chapter 19. It says there in verse 17, and Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with God. Well, what an appropriate day to meet with God, but on the Sabbath day, right? And they stood at the foot of the mountain, and Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. Now remember that, there was a quake. It's interesting because the death of Christ on Passover day was marked by a quake. His resurrection was marked by a quake. And also Pentecost is marked by a quake. Now you got to bring that into your final events on the feasts, because there will be quakes. The book of Revelation shows that there will be quakes, and there's 4 quakes mentioned in the book of Revelation. You got to correlate those with the feasts. Yeah, that's your homework. You accept it, okay. All right. The whole mountain trembled, and it quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him with a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, on top of the mountain. And the Lord called Moses up the mountain to the top, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also which come near the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses said, Don't worry, I've made arrangements so that nobody will touch the mountain. And then God began to speak the 10 Commandments. Now, if you look again, chapter 24, verse 17. Exodus 24:17. And the sight of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So there is a quake, there is trembling, and there is fire on top of the mountain. Now just keep that in mind, because we're going to see Pentecost in a while. And clouds, yes, and clouds. All right? Thick cloud. The Lord came down. It was like a heavenly pulpit, that mountain. Now, let me ask you, who came down on the mountain? Was it the Father or was it the Son? Who proclaimed the law? Whose voice was heard on the mountain? Was it the Son? Or was it the Father? Okay, let me read it to you. Historical Sketches, page 231. Christ and the Father, standing side by side, proclaim God's divine law, the 10 Commandments. Historical Sketches, page 231. And you will also find it in Review and Herald. Well, that's enough, because that's taken from the other. So God the Father and Christ came down on the mountain. Now, it wasn't that they spoke together. 1, 2, 3. I am the Lord thy God. No. It was Christ's voice. And I could show you from the Bible and from the Spirit of prophecy that it was Christ who proclaimed the 10 Commandments. But the Father was right next to him. He left his throne in heaven to come down on Mount Sinai. That's how important his law is to him. And his covenant. All right? Now, where was the Holy Spirit? Where was the Holy Spirit? Of course, it was there, but it was the Holy Spirit that wrote the law on the tables of stone. You say, how is that? Well, my Bible says in Exodus 31 who wrote the law. Let's see. I believe it's 31:18. And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with what? With the finger of God. Well, don't think that it was God the Father carving on the stones. Don't think that it was the finger of Christ carving on the stone. Yes, you can call it the finger of God the Father, the finger of God the Son, because the finger of God is the Holy Spirit. You want proof of that? You want it? Okay, go to the New Testament, Matthew chapter 12. Matthew 12. We're going to compare two scriptures. Matthew 12, and we're going to compare that with Luke 11. Please open to both places since we're going to be comparing. Hold the pages in between like this, and we're going to go back and forth. All right? Matthew 12, verse 22, and Luke 11, verse 14 and on. I'll begin with Matthew 12. Then was brought unto him one possessed with a devil, blind and dumb, and he healed him, insomuch as the blind and the dumb both spake and saw. And all the people were amazed and said, Is not this the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard, they said, This fellow does not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. Luke 11. And he was casting out a devil that was dumb. And it came to pass, when the devil was gone out, the dumb spake, and the people wondered. But some of them said, He casteth out the devils through Beelzebub, the chief of the devils. And others, tempting him, sought of him a sign from heaven. But he, knowing their thoughts, said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against a house falleth. If Satan also be divided against himself, how shall his kingdom stand? Because ye say that I cast out devils through Beelzebub. Go back to Matthew 12, verse 25. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. Again, Luke 11, verse 19. And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your sons cast them out? They shall be your judges. Verse 20. But if I with the finger of God cast out devils, no doubt the kingdom of God is come to you. Matthew 12, 28. But if I cast out the devils by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God is come to you. Did you see the comparison? So who is the finger of God? The Spirit of the Lord. And my Bible says that God gave Moses on the mountain 2 tables of stone written with the finger of God. The finger of God is the Spirit of God. So all 3 were on that mountain. Praise the Lord. Do you know a little bit about those tables of stone? What were they made out of? Yes, you know. All right, then I don't need to go through into that. What color is? You don't know about it? Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yes, I'll give you the text and you can look them up. All right. That's Exodus 24. We just got through reading a little bit there, how the mountain was full of fire and was shaking. And then it says, this is Matthew 24. Exodus 24. Yes, in verse 10. And they saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of what stone? Sapphire stone. And it, as it were, the body of heaven in its clearness. Now let me ask you, what color is sapphire? Yes, it's blue, isn't it? Like the sky. Yes, it says here, like the heaven itself. Same color as the deep blue in the sky. Sapphire. Now that's the stone that was under God when they saw him. That's the only stone that is mentioned in connection with the Ten Commandments. Now you can read the same thing in Ezekiel chapter 1 and in Ezekiel chapter 10. Again, the Lord appears in his throne, and under his throne there's this paved basin of sapphire stone, blue like the sky. Beautiful. A stone of sapphire. Now, my Bible says that the Lord himself gave him the stones, and the stones were a work of God, just like the writing on them was a work from God. Remember that? Well, what stone did the Lord use to make those stones? The only stone that is mentioned is the sapphire stone. But let me give you a little more on this. The Jewish people believe that they were made not only of sapphire stone, but that it was actually made from a piece of the throne of God. Okay, this is The Beliefs and Customs of the Jews by Louis Ginsberg. Volume 2, page 118. The Ten Commandments were made out of sapphire stone. And in volume 6, page 49, this is a Jewish rabbi. He says they were taken of the sapphire stone that makes up the throne of the everlasting God. The tables of stone. So the Jews believe it was tables of stone taken either from the paved underneath the feet of God or from his very own throne. Isn't it interesting that they're color blue? Numbers 15, you know that text. Please look it up. Numbers 15. It's interesting to know that when the Lord commanded his people to put a ribbon on their mantles, verse 37, Numbers 15:37, it says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe on the borders a ribbon of what color? Blue. And why blue? Because, well, read on. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord to do them. Now you see, the ribbon of blue around the garment was color blue because immediately they would put together that color with the color of the stones that made the Ten Commandments. They were color blue. This is why the blue on the garments remembered or allowed them to remember the commandments of God. This is beautiful, isn't it? God's holy law was written on sapphire stone, color blue like the sky. And it reminds us of the law. And in the sanctuary, the colors of the sanctuary. Oh, I wish I could go into this. That's not my subject right now, but it's wonderful. The false church has a false priesthood. And the false church has the colors of the sanctuary. The red or scarlet, it's got the violet or purple, and it's got the gold. Those are the colors of the sanctuary, but it's missing one. It's missing blue. Why do you think that the scarlet woman does not have the blue? Because she's forgotten the law of God. They left it aside. They changed it. Well, anyhow, that's another subject altogether. Let me go back to the giving of the law. The first Pentecost. Yeah, you got me onto this. You got me onto this. Then I don't have time to finish my subject. All right. So, God the Father, Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit came down on Mount Sinai to proclaim the law. This is awesome. I wish I could tell you a little more of that first Pentecost. It's amazing. But it was so terrible hearing the voice of God when he proclaimed this law. Now, he was not going to end with the Ten Commandments. He was going to go on. Because the covenant is sealed on chapter 24. So whatever comes between chapter 20 and 24 was part of the instruction that the Lord was planning to give. But the people could not stand it. So they said, let him speak no more, please. He can tell you anything that he wants to tell us, and you tell us, but we don't want to hear his voice anymore. Well, the book of Hebrews says that it was so frightening that even Moses was trembling. Yeah, that's what the book of Hebrews says, chapter 12. The voice was so strong and it shook the heaven and the earth. The whole mountain was shaking from the voice of God. And you know, that voice will be heard again on this earth. And it's going to be when the Lord himself proclaims the Ten Commandments again. Did you know that the Ten Commandments are going to be proclaimed? And this time it won't be just the people at the foot of the mount, on Mount Sinai, that will hear those words. It'll be the whole universe. Ellen White says that that voice is going to shake the heavens and the earth. Look it up. Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews 12. And that's going to happen on Pentecost. I'm not going to get into that because that's not my subject. That's your subject. Yes, but in Hebrews chapter 12, it speaks about Mount Sinai, then it speaks about the voice that speaks from the heavenly sanctuary. Okay. This is verse 18. For ye are not come unto the mountain that might be touched. Could be touched, but it wasn't touched. And that burned with fire, nor unto the blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them anymore. And it was so terrible, it says in verse 21, was so terrible that the sight that at the sight that Moses said, I exceedingly fear and quake. Even Moses was quaking from that voice. But then it says, verse 26, but the voice that then shook the earth is going to speak once more. It hath promised, saying, yet once more, and I shall shake not the earth only, but also the heavens. Can you imagine when that voice is heard again? Yes, that's Matthew 24, verse 29. Read it. Matthew 24, verse 29, it'll be the voice of God that's going to make the heavens shake. Let's see how it says here. I could quote it. I could quote it by heart in Spanish. Yeah. Immediately after the tribulation. This is right at the end of the great tribulation that comes. Shall the sun be darkened? That's the fifth plague. The darkening of the sun. And the moon shall not give her light. And the stars shall fall from heaven. And the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. The powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Ellen White, in her shortest vision, she had over 2,000 dreams and visions, but in the shortest one, it wasn't even 30 seconds long. You will find it in early writings. Page 41. That vision is called the shaking of the powers of heaven. And she says that what's going to shake the heavens and the earth is going to be the voice of God, announcing the deliverance of God's people. Oh, that is wonderful. And it's all in the sanctuary. You cannot know about these things unless you go into the feasts. Only those that are studying the feast will know when this will happen. The others will not understand. They'll be scared like Moses. And they won't even understand the voice. But those that know will understand. Praise the Lord. Now, this is wonderful, okay? But I'm getting out of my subject again. I need to go back. That first Pentecost, God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit were present on that mountain, and they proclaimed His law. The eternal covenant. And I got through saying that it wasn't just the 10 Commandments. It included the statutes that come right after that. And it includes the feasts as part of the covenant. Because if you go to chapter 24, see, on chapter 23, you will find the feasts. The 3 times that every Israelite was to come before the Lord. And then on chapter 24, the covenant is ratified through the blood. Somebody was telling me that you have this on your book too. Is it there? Well, read that book then. Because it's good. I haven't read your complete book. The little one. No, I haven't. I just got it. Just last week. Okay. You'll forgive me. All right, on chapter 24, the Lord, the first 11 verses shows how Moses signs the agreement and sprinkles the blood to ratify the covenant. And then the Lord said unto Moses, come up to me on the mountain, and there I'll give you the tables of stone and the law and commandments which I've written to you that you may teach them. You see, the law plus the things that Moses taught them. And Moses rose up, and his minister Joshua. And Moses went up into the mountain of God. And he said unto the elders, tarry ye here, for I'll come again to you. And when Moses went up into the mountain, into the cloud that covered the mountain, and the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai. And the cloud covered it 6 days, and on the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the sight of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. This whole thing is the ratification of the covenant, chapter 24. But in chapter 23, you find the statutes of the Lord. Chapter 20 is the 10 Commandments. Chapter 21 is the civil laws, how we ought to treat each other. Chapter 22, chapter 23 includes the feasts, and those are all statutes of the Lord. And then chapter 24 is the signing of the covenant. And that's where it talks about the sapphire stone under the feet of God. All right? Now, I need to finish on Pentecost. And how much longer do I have? It's over? Well, I have another lecture. Okay. I'll tell you what I will do. I will not go into the fall festivals. The next time. Am I invited? Okay. The next time I will go into the fall festivals and explain. So this afternoon I'm going to explain to you the fulfillment of the proclamation of the law on Pentecost. And you've got no idea what happened today. People think that it was just the pouring out of the Holy Spirit. You have no idea what happened on that day and why Jesus tarried 40 days here on earth. And what happened between those days, between the time he went up to heaven and between the time that the Holy Spirit fell on the disciples. All that is in the sanctuary. And we will find out what happened, because the sanctuary was a shadow of the reality of the ministry of Jesus. And as we understand what happened in the earthly sanctuary, we began to open our eyes to the reality of the heavenly sanctuary where Christ ministers for us. Pentecost came 50 days later. It reminded the people of Israel. This feast was established by God as a memorial of the proclamation of the law, where God himself descended and his voice shook the earth. They would never forget that Sabbath day. They would never, in their whole lives, they could ever forget that. Imagine hearing the voice of God themselves. It was so awful that they said, I don't want to hear it anymore. You talk to God and then you tell us what he said, but we don't need to hear it anymore. What a sermon. What a sermon, my friend. What a sermon. 10 words is called in the book of Deuteronomy. The 10 words. It wasn't a long sermon. You could read that whole sermon in less than 10 minutes. How it would stay with the people forever. And this is why the Lord wants us to remember. Look, we are God's chosen people. We are his holy priesthood on earth. Why wouldn't we take into consideration the very day that reminds us of the proclamation of the law? The Catholics have their Pentecost, but they don't even talk about the law. Do they? No. And yet we as people have done aside with Pentecost when it reminds us of the proclamation of the law. It was the ratification of the covenant, the signing of the covenant, but it also reminds us of the new covenant. And that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. Not so much what happened on earth on Pentecost, but what happened in heaven on the day of Pentecost. And that is awesome. Believe me, when we get through just studying on Pentecost, you will never see Pentecost the same way, because it is wonderful. May the Lord help us as we try to put together these things that we've learned and live by them. These are the statutes and the commandments that the Lord commanded his people to do. It's not enough to hear about these. We got to do them if we're going to follow God's word. And the people said, we shall do everything that the Lord commanded. And before 40 days, they were not even doing it anymore. They'd forgotten all that trembling, all that quaking, all that fear wasn't enough to keep him faithful. It is only Jesus who can keep us faithful.